Hello everyone, I'm Khalid and I'll be your instructor for this Python course provided by Learning While Practicing. In this video, we'll be talking about mathematical and string functions in Python. So let's get started. So let's start with a mathematical function in Python. And in order to use most of the built-in functions for math operations, we need to import or use some existing module in Python. And this module is called math. In order to do this, we can just write this statement. So from math import asterisk. So this is just importing all of the content of the math module into this program in order to be able to use the different functions existing in that module. So the first function that we're going to use is called ceil. So this function takes some floating point number. Let's say we have a floating point number which is x and the value is, let's say, 10.9. So the ceil takes the number to the next integer. So this is converting it to an integer, and that integer will be the next value for that number. So if we do ceil of x and print, then run, that would be 11. So this is 10.9, and when we do ceil, that would be 11. The opposite for this function is called floor. So if we do floor of x and run, that would be 10, which is this number without the fraction part. And another interesting function is the power function. So if you want to raise some number to a specific power, there is an existing function for that. So this function is called POW or power, and it takes two arguments. The first argument is the number itself, and then the power that we need to raise it to. So let's say we need to calculate x to the power 2. So this is how we write it. Let's make x a simpler number here. Let's say it's 5, and then we'll print that out. So when we run this, we find that the value is 25. We can do the power using another different method in Python. We don't even need to use the math module at all. So there is less power operation or the power operator in Python. So in order to do the same thing, we can just type x to asterisk and 2. This is exactly the same except for one small difference. If we run that, we also get 25. So the difference here, if you notice that this number is a floating point number, it has a fraction part of it, although it's 0, but it still counts. This one, it's only an integer. So this method returns only integers. By using the power function in the math module, returns floating point numbers. You can also make sure that this is the case by using the type function here to see what is the type of this result, and then run. And as we mentioned, this is a floating point, and the second one, this way, returns an integer number. Okay, so let's move on to the next function, which is the factorial function. So the factorial takes a number, let's say x, and then it gets the factorial for this number. So the definition of the factorial is just x multiplied by x minus 1, multiplied by x minus 2, and so on, all the way down to 1. So if we print that value and run, so this is 120. So that is the factorial. We can also use log function. So we have log to the base 2 and log to the base 10. So let's start with log to the base 2, and let's have a number like 512, and then print that, run. So that's 9. Why it is 9? Because 2 to the power of 9 is 512. Let's try another one. 1024, run. So that is 10, and so on. We can also use this log to the base 10 function, and let's give it a number like 1000. and run, we can find here that the value is 3. So why 3? Because 10 to the 3 to the power of 3 is 1,000. Sounds good. Let's move on to the next function. We have the square root function. Of course, it takes a number and finds out the square root of that number. So if we have 25 and we print the square root for that number, run, so that would be 5. And try another number like 9, that should be 3, and here we go. Another popular trigonometric functions are like sine and cosine. We can use them. So in order to use sine, we just type sine and then it takes a radian degree. So what if we don't know the radian degrees, or I'm sorry, the radian angles, because degrees are more popular? We can also convert degrees into radians using radians. So we have a method, a function called radians, and it takes degrees. So here we have the radian representation of 90 degrees. And this is an argument to the sine function, and we need to find the value of this sine. Let's run. So here the value is 1. We also can do the same with the cosine function, radians 45, for example, and run. And here we go. So sine and cosine, very commonly used function, might be very useful. We also have that constant pi, which is very popular in mathematics. There's a high chance that you'd be using it if you're doing some mathematical operations. So if we just write pi and print it, we know the value that would be expected, this value. So let's use it in a useful program, small program. Let's say that we need to calculate the area of a specific circle, and we have the radius for this circle. Let's say this is r and it's 2.5. We need to calculate the area. So the area is just pi multiplied by r raised to the power of 2, right? So in order to do that, we have learned the power r and 2, and then we print area. If we run that, here we find that the area is calculated as per the equation we have provided. Okay, so that would be it for the math part, and let's move on to the string functions. So we have looked at strings before in our very first program where we printed the hello world. So hello world there was our first string, so we can have a string defined as this hello world. Of course, we can print that as we have seen before, and if we run, it is just printing this string. So this is a string, and it will be enclosed by 2 double quotations, or enclosed in a double quotations. But we can also use like single quotes, and it would still work. Okay, so the next thing is that we can also have like very long strings that take many lines. So in order to do this, we need 3 double quotes or 3 single quotes. Both of them would work, and then we can start writing down our string. So let's say this is a very long string that extends many lines and then even further. Let's print y and see what would be the output. And it prints exactly the same way that we enter this in our source code. So that would be a very good thing to notice. We can have like strings that span multiple lines. We also need to know that strings are considered like arrays of characters. So we can access individual characters within this string. We can access this specific character, we can access that one. So how do we do this? We access them using indexing. So each character within this string has an index. So this character, the first character, has an index of 0. This one, the second character, has an index of 1. And the next one has an index of 2, and so on. So in order to get the first character of a string, we can just print x of 0. That prints the first character. and yeah, it prints the first character of our string. We can also do this, let's say x of 4, so that is the O letter at index 4, and so on. We can also do some slicing within the string if we need to print or have some substring stored. We can, let's say we have a string str1, and that string would be x, but only from indices 1 through 7. And let's print that out. Print str1, run. We find that this is a partial string of the original string that we had before. So what does this mean? So that means that we're constructing a string starting index 1. So index 1 here is E to index 7, but not including index 7. So if we go over here, we can find that index 7 here is O, as we looked at this before, and it doesn't include the character at that index, so it basically stops at the previous one, which is W right here. So slicing, that is slicing. We can also know the length of the string by using this function len, or length, and just pass the string name. So let's try it with str1 and run. We didn't print that, we need to print it. Let's print and run. So we can find that the length here is 6, which is expected here. We know how we constructed this string. Another function is called upper. So this function converts all of the letters of a string, let's say here x, to upper cases. And then we can print that. So we can see that all of the characters have been converted into uppercase. And also have lower, which does the exact opposite. So all characters here have been converted into lowercase. So that would be it for strings and mathematical functions for now, and hopefully see you on the next video.